So just the other day on my YouTube account, I got a really, really racist message. And this message was saying, a portion of the message said that Black Americans just need to get up and do something for themselves. Okay, well, I'm just going to do a little history lesson, all right? Because first, I want to talk about white America, okay? So, white Americans, when they first came over here, they weren't actually Americans yet, okay? Um, but when they came over here, they were indigenous people here already, okay? And so, the reason why white people were able to do what they did is because indigenous people actually helped them and assisted them, okay? They were nice to them, all right? And then the white people kind of took over from there. Okay, that was the indigenous mistake. All right, but to think that white people came over and just knew what to do with the land and everything else, they didn't. No, it was because you got to understand that European lands and in the land of the United States of America are different. The indigenous knew what the European didn't. Okay, so and then you had the transatlantic slave trade. They still couldn't do everything. Okay, the heat, everything else. They couldn't do everything. They needed somebody to help them build, so they went over to Africa. The Europeans went to Africa, and then they went with this transatlantic slave trade thing. Okay, and so they needed people who knew how to build. They needed people who knew vaccinations. They needed people who knew how to cook. They needed people who knew everything, how to maintain agriculture. As a matter of fact, George Washington Carver was the one who saved the agricultural land of the United States of America, and he was an African American, formerly enslaved as a baby. So as far as African Americans doing something for themselves, not only do African Americans do things for ourselves, but we do things for everyone else. Everyone else benefits. Case in point, the Civil Rights Act and the Immigration Act. The Civil Rights Act was actually called the Negro Act because it was us who gave birth to it. Everyone benefits, correct? Correct. So now let's move on up to the Civil War. Now, every black person in the United States of America was not enslaved during at the time of the Civil War. It was the southern states, okay? The northern states had already set everyone free, okay? So you had people free since the 1700s in the north, and you had people still in bondage in the south. This is the Confederacy. Down in the Confederacy, 1 out of every 20 African Americans were illiterate. Why? Because of the literacy laws, anti-literacy laws against them. Okay, they could be killed if anyone knew that they could read. So either they would fake it and say, no, I can't, or they really couldn't. Okay. However, by the year 1900, nearly every single African American could read and write. Not only that, we had our own universities and schools. African Americans were doing so good, in fact, that people started segregating us by class. There was actually an African American middle class about 30 years after the Emancipation Proclamation. At that point, we were already headed toward more millionaires than ever before, because they were super rich people prior to the Emancipation Proclamation. Several of the inventions before the Civil War were invented by African Americans. James Forten is one of them. He was an inventor who invented the sailing device, and that was way back in the 1700s. African Americans also invented the technique for refining sugar. We invented lots of things for the railroad. The reason why we even have bulk shoes being made is because of a black man. Shoes don't have to be made by hand, one pair by one pair. They can be made in bulk. So several of the inventions, over 1,000 inventions, okay, prior to the Civil War. I might have exaggerated. Let's say about 500 inventions prior to the Civil War, okay, and before the 1900s. Those were African American inventions that everyone benefits from today. If you've even ever used A modern day pen, guess who invented that? Yep, one of us. Don't go to the store and get any ice cream. The modern day ice cream is our invention as well. Soul food. Right now, African Americans have approximately 100 museums dedicated to our ethnicity and our history. Right now, African Americans sit on over 1,000 inventions that have been utilized here in the United States of America and around the globe. Inside your cars, inside your homes, outside your homes, in the hospitals, everywhere, in your restaurants. Those weren't invented by white people. Those were invented by African Americans. Even the music of America belongs to African Americans. Yep. The reason why people get the music and a lot of things confused is because one creator said it best, and I'm going to try to repeat how he said it, but in short, okay? It's because, for instance, over in Japan, they're a separate entity, and whatever they do, their music, their food, they keep because they're the majority, okay? However, African Americans are not the majority over here. So even if we do something, there's always going to be someone looking in and trying to copy it or take it. So it's not that it's not African American culture or part of our identity. It's because we aren't the majority here in this country. So others will latch on. So basically, it's pretty hard to gatekeep, okay, in a country this big with this many people, and we're only 50 million. So while it seems like African Americans to that racist have done nothing, we have went in our small group, we've made America. But because we are just 50 million, to many it would seem, how could they? That's impossible. How could this all be African American stuff? How in the world could this all be African American? How can the bulk of the music be African American when there are only 50 million? How in the world could the bulk of jazz, blues, R&B, pop, rock, country, hip hop? It all started in the plantation, in the fields, when no one was paying us any attention. All the way up until the Harlem Renaissance, when everybody was like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, what's this? This is new, this is new. It wasn't new. So instead of believing the lie that white people created every single thing in the United States of America and every single invention and every single this and every single that, understand that African Americans have been that force, that powerful force, all the way back in the beginning, because that is the reason why they brought African enslaved people to America in the first place. To do what they couldn't do. And this is why we deserve reparations. And this is also why the United States is one of the greatest countries on earth. The only reason why it won't and it still hasn't lived up to what it's supposed to be is because of racism. And this is what our African American forefathers fought so hard in this country to achieve a country without it. The democracy we live in wouldn't be the democracy today if it wasn't for African Americans fighting for equal rights and justice. We did everything for ourselves and for you too.